This podcast is brought to you by the American Enterprise Institute.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, review, and share.
Thanks for listening. Here's our show.
What in the hell's going on?
What the hell is going on?
What the hell is going on?
I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
You don't have to know what the hell is on it.
What the hell's the matter with these guys?
We don't know what's going on.
What the hell's going on?
Who in God's name knows what it's all about?
Hi, I'm Danielle Pletka.
And I'm Marc Thiessen.
Welcome to our podcast. What the hell is going on? Marc, what the hell are you up to?
Well, more interesting, what the hell are you up to? You have left from Italy to France. Last time we had you were on a train from Milan to Firenze, and now you've gone from Firenze to Cassis, you said? Where are you in France?
We are in Cassis.
Bring me some creme de cassis when you return.
Our listeners are going to wonder why we're not doing a travelogue and why we're talking about politics, but you had something to say about our lovely Kamala Harris.
Exactly.
And I want to hear it.
Yes, so we're doing another one of our episodes of the new thing we're trying out, which so far our feedback has been good. We're doing What the Hell Extra, otherwise known as What the Hell Did I Write This Week? And so this week I wrote an essay for the Washington Post entitled, Harris is a gaffe-prone leftist. Why didn't anyone challenge her?
Yeah. No, it was interesting. So I will tell you, and I've written this and I've said this, I think that the Republican sort of, memo that this was a coup and all of the accusations that Biden was pushed aside. I mean, I'm sorry, who was screaming most loudly that the man was mentally incompetent? So then the Democrats are like, you're right, he is mentally incompetent. We're going to push him aside. And the Republicans are like, how could you do that to that honorable gentleman? I thought that was
No, that's not what they're saying at all. That's what the Democrats are saying now. He's a modern-day George Washington. And as I tweeted out, yeah, if George Washington had hidden his cognitive decline from the American people and been pushed out of office by the other founding fathers, he'd be exactly the same as Joe Biden.
Nonetheless, Marc, do you really think it's appropriate to call this a coup?
I don't know if it's a coup. Their point is that the Democrats are campaigning on the fact that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, yet they are in the process of nominating a woman who doesn't have a single primary vote, throwing out the man who had 14 million primary votes and accusing Republicans of being undemocratic. So it's a fair point to make. I don't know if the election hinges on it, but I don't think it's out of bounds.
Well, I think it's a little bit hyperbolic and a little bit disingenuous, but I want to hear your piece.
I make a better case against her. So why don't we do my piece and then we can have a conversation. You can tell me if you agree, disagree, or what you think.
Okay, go for it.
All right, here's my essay, which is mine, by Marc Thiessen. Well, that was fast. After President Biden announced he would not run for a second term, Vice President Harris declared her intention to, quote, earn and win, unquote, the Democratic nomination. Well, in less than 24 hours, she had apparently secured all the delegates needed to lock up the nomination. Which raises a question. Why did no one challenge her? After all, Harris is undeniably vulnerable. She ran a catastrophic campaign for president 4 years ago, flaming out before even reaching the Iowa caucuses. Her public approval has hovered around that of Biden, who is himself one of the most unpopular presidents in the last 70 years. She is also less popular than former President Donald Trump, the man she must beat. Indeed, the Post's recent average of 11 polls conducted since the debate found little difference between how she and Biden stack up against Trump. She is as gaffe-prone as Biden, but without the excuse of advanced age. She has a grating habit of saying simple-minded things in a profound voice, such as, there is great significance to the passage of time, and of talking down to voters as though they were small children, as when she said, Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine, unquote. She is an episode of Veep come to life. And unlike Biden, who at least had the veneer of moderation, she is an unabashed leftist. She has supported the Democratic Socialist agenda from the Green New Deal to Medicare for All. In her 2019 campaign, she proposed a mind-boggling $45.5 trillion in new spending, according to Manhattan Institute budget expert Brian Riedel. She pledged to ban fracking, which won't go over well in must-win Pennsylvania, and promised to decriminalize illegal border crossings and provide taxpayer-funded health care for illegal migrants, which might explain her catastrophic failure as Biden's borders are. She is an abortion zealot who became the first vice president to campaign at an abortion clinic and has suggested that a Catholic judge who belongs to the Knights of Columbus was unfit to serve on the federal bench. She raised money for a bail fund that helped put people accused and later convicted of violent crimes back on the streets. And she supports giving former prisoners, including rapists and murderers, the right to vote. She would be the most radical candidate ever to secure the Democratic Party's presidential nomination. 4 years ago, Democrats panicked at the prospect that Senator Bernie Sanders might be their nominee and chose Biden instead. Well, Harris's Senate record is to the left of Sanders. In fact, it was the furthest left of the entire U.S. Senate, according to the nonpartisan government transparency watchdog GovTrack. And as Biden's vice president, she maintains ownership of all the disastrous policies that dragged down his approval ratings. She cast the deciding vote for the massive spending package that unleashed the worst inflation in 4 decades, and presided over the worst border crisis in American history, and helped lead the cover-up of Biden's cognitive decline, repeatedly assuring the American people that the president was vibrant, tireless, and absolutely authoritative in rooms around the globe as well as in the Oval Office. So why didn't a more electable candidate, of which there are many, throw his or her hat in the ring and seek the Democratic nomination? Simple. If you are a white Democrat, such as Governor Josh Shapiro, Andy Beshear, Roy Cooper, Tim Walz, and Gretchen Whitmer, or Senator Mark Kelly, with a seemingly bright future in Democratic politics, why would you get crosswise with Congressman James Clyburn in the Congressional Black Caucus? Why would you try and stop the first black woman from leading a major party ticket? The party of identity politics is never going to pick you over her, and if you did try to challenge her, she'll play the race card against you just like she did against Biden in 2019. Maybe it's because the Democrats have spent the last 3 weeks since Biden's disastrous debate in utter chaos, and they don't want another 3 weeks of chaos that even a mini primary, whatever the hell that is, would entail. That might be a mistake. Harris is just one cringe-inducing interview or word salad away from sending the Democrats back into panic mode. And Republicans will use her far-left record to defeat not only her, but also vulnerable Democrats running in swing states who will now have to defend her. Besides, if Trump wins, he'll be a one-term president, which means those potential challengers would be able to run for an open seat 4 years from now. Heck, Harris might even pick one of them for vice president, which would allow them to raise their national profile with a strong debate performance without anyone blaming them for losing the White House. Indeed, the fact that so many electable Democrats are choosing to keep their powder dry for 2028 shows they really don't believe Trump is a threat to democracy. They all seem confident that if Trump wins in November, there will still be a free and fair election 4 years from now in which they can compete. And they're right. That's my column.
They are right, and that's quite a litany. I mean, I gotta say, Mark, even if you were cherry picking, and Democrats will accuse you of cherry picking, even if you were
A lot of cherries.
there are an awful lot of cherries in Kamala's bowl. You know, look, we both understand what happened, right? We both understand that they stuck with Biden too long. We both understand that nobody wanted to do the hard thing, even though everybody in Washington knew that he wasn't mentally competent. We both understand that, as do lots and lots of other people, many of them Democrats, that this was an absolute sort of shit sandwich that they got served by Joe Biden, and that they were, pulling a Hail Mary right at the end, and that they couldn't pick anybody other than Kamala Harris. But
Sure they could.
wait, but no, Mark, you rightly say, for them, I go back to our podcast with Rui Teixeira about this and say, if you are the party of identity politics, if identity politics is the most important thing to you, right? Doesn't matter whether you're a good person or a bad person, doesn't matter whether you're smart or honest or successful or a striver or a decent human being. What matters is you're black or you're brown or you're woman or you're trans or you're some letter of the alphabet you and I haven't yet discovered. And if you are that party, you have to pick Kamala Harris. That is, and by the way, we know they are that party because that's why Joe Biden picked her in the first place. He said, I'm going to pick a black woman. All right, America's not a meritocracy to the Democratic Party. That is, Kamala Harris is the next person in line if you are that party. And that is their fate. That is, by the way, why they're, I believe, going to lose.
You may be right, but keep in mind, they panicked because they said Biden had no path to the presidency, but he was still, she's likely to lose, but it's not a done deal. So, she's been out of the spotlight. First of all, her numbers for most of the Biden presidency her approval rating has been lower than his, which is quite an accomplishment. But she's not been in the spotlight. People haven't focused on her so much. They just see the stupid things she says, the dumb commentary that everybody makes fun of, and they see the disaster on the border, though apparently she wasn't the border czar, we're now told
that's
retroactively,
outrageous.
which is just absolute BS. We can talk about that in a minute. But she's not a deeply known quantity because she got out of the race before Iowa last time. Right? And she wasn't at the center stage. And so she's got 100 days to sort of skate through under the wire and hope that the Republicans don't have enough time and an opportunity to define her for the American people and expose the litany of leftist policies.
So why do you think, apropos of that, because of course, my view about Kamala Harris is the more you see her, the more you recognize she's a dingbat. Okay, and I use a nice word.
We got in the debate of box of rocks or bucket of rocks, dumber than.
That's right. So yes, she's a bucket and a box of rocks. Okay, we know that, but the more people see that, the more they recognize that the person who explained to an all-black radio station that Ukraine was a smaller country next to Russia, which is a bigger country, is in fact a maroon. Okay, so why is the news that Trump is backing away from a debate with her?
I don't think he's backing away from a debate with her. I think that what he did was when Joe Biden was the nominee, he just said, "I'll debate you anywhere," because he knew that Biden was cognitively declined, and he thought that Biden was going to try and get out of the debate. And so I think what Trump did was it was a rope-a-dope, right? So Biden came out and laid out these very strict conditions. I'm only going to do it in front of left-wing media and the microphones off and all whatever the rest. And he thought, or his campaign thought, that Trump would counter and negotiate and say, no, we have to have one on Fox News and one on a left network. And they would just say, you know what, we just can't come to agreement. Sorry, it's not going to happen. And instead, Trump called their bluff and said, yeah, anytime, any place, let's do it. Because he knew that Biden would fall on his face because he was cognitively impaired. She's not cognitively impaired. She's a different candidate, a different nominee. And so he's saying, no, I'm happy to debate you, but it's not going to be the same deal that I gave Biden. We need to negotiate this. And if she won't show up to a debate, then she's the one who looks like she's afraid. He's perfectly willing to debate. Every candidate debates. Nobody does what Trump did and says, yeah, whatever rules you want, anytime, any place, I'll follow all your liberal rules in front of your liberal network. So we're back to a normal campaign.
Generous explication. I think that's a very generous explication. And I think, by the way, that those rules helped Trump more than they helped Biden.
Oh, 100%.
They stopped Trump from being himself. So the notion that somehow he should look for a whole new set of rules against, bucket or box of rocks is ridiculous. And it just is making.
No, it's not. I mean, why shouldn't one of the debates be on Fox News? Why should they all be on? Why should it be one? First of all, why should it be just one debate left? He agreed to 2 presidential debates with the Democratic nominee, and he wasted one of those on Biden, who is no longer the Democratic nominee. So there should be at least 2 debates, and maybe one of them can be on ABC. Maybe one of them should be on Fox. Why should it be just one debate left? Like, why does she get to have Biden use up one of her debates? She should have to debate him more than one time. I just think this is normal process. This is a normal negotiation between 2 presidential candidates.
You and I are going to come back to this. You and I are going to come back to this. Okay,
we will.
And I'm
absolutely.
Happy, and I will be happy to say that you're right if you are right. But
and I'll be happy to say you're right if you're right. But I think he wants to debate her because she is dumber than a bucket full of boxes of rocks.
Yes,
and it will come through in a debate. So
I think she's a disastrous candidate for the Democrats for all. And you know what? Remember my mantra: everybody in Washington knows everything. Right? Not everybody knows the same thing, but everybody in Washington knows everything. And one thing everybody in Washington knows is that she is the last person they wanted to pick, but they were stuck between a rock and a hard place. They had no choice.
But let's talk about the media going full in for her. So
my God.
She was the border czar. I mean, literally. So Axios had a reporter for Axios put out a story saying that Republicans are calling Kamala Harris the border czar, but she never had that title. And everybody turned around and pointed out the 2021 Axios story calling her the border czar. It's like everybody was calling her the border czar. Like she was responsible for dealing with the root causes of immigration through diplomacy with Mexico and Honduras and Guatemala. She wasn't the border czar. Give me a freaking break.
That was the largest crock of crap I've heard in a while. The New York Times, so yesterday I was sitting here and Axios has been fronting for her, but the New York Times has been relentless. And this headline came to me yesterday morning, as I'm sure it came to you, on politics, tackling the falsehoods about Kamala Harris. I'm sorry, what? Is that your job, New York Times, to tackle the falsehoods about Kamala Harris? Or are you just reporting to us what's going on? They have lost it. But I will say, they also told us all, right? All. That they were cheap fakes, that Biden was totally great,
Yep.
that he was the sharpest tack in the box. And then, of course, we got to see what our lying eyes were telling us in that debate. And that's the problem for Kamala Harris, is the papers are going to say, oh, wasn't the border czar, didn't do this, didn't do that, wasn't here, all these lies about her. And then we're all going to see her, and we're going to realize, okay, she's an idiot. I'm sorry, there's no other word. She's an idiot.
So here's the thing. So if she wasn't the border czar, then why did Lester Holt in that famous interview say, why haven't you gone to the border?
Yeah,
Because if she wasn't the border czar, why would she go to the border? And she didn't respond because I'm not the border czar. But I'm going to Guatemala and I'm going to Honduras. She said, well, I haven't been to Europe either. Ho, ho, ho. So she made an idiot of herself, but also everyone assumed she was the border czar. And here's the thing. If the Biden border policy was a roaring success, she'd embrace the fact that she was the border czar. It's because it's an admission. The fact that she doesn't want to be called the border czar is an admission that the Biden border policy is a disaster.
Look,
And if
I will say this, Mark. I think the thing is, expression that I never used, but that our late boss used to use, look, they got a pig in a poke. They had no choice. They got stuck with this candidate because Joe Biden picked her, because Joe Biden should never have picked her. He picked her for all the wrong reasons. She got where she was for all the wrong reasons. And now what we're going to see is this process. I do think that the honeymoon will be, the next week or 2 weeks, but it can't last till the election.
I think it could be about 107 days.
I don't think so.
I think the media's honeymoon with her is going to be, they are not going to turn on her. She is all that's standing between America and Donald Trump. They are going to absolutely fawn over her, make excuses for her, defend her.
But how can she keep her mouth shut? How can she keep her mouth shut? Her mouth is her biggest liability. How can she keep her mouth shut for the next 3 months?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. The other thing I want to talk to you about, Dany, is what this means for our never Trump friends in the conservative movement, or the deeply Trump skeptical voter who really was struggling with this vote. So Joe Biden, one of the points I made in the column is that Joe Biden at least gave them the veneer of moderation, even though his policies were not moderate by any stretch of the imagination. This is Bernie Sanders. She's
worse than Bernie
She's
Sanders.
worse than Bernie Sanders.
By the way, the GovTrack took her record down.
They took down the 2019 ranking, but they kept up the 2020 ranking because it's linked in my column. Because I saw that, because I had mentioned this in a column in 2019, because I did a column on why Kamala Harris is not a moderate, because everyone was painting her as the moderate when Joe Biden picked her as vice president. I was like, no, she's not. Here's her record. And there was that, I quoted that GovTrack. And then when I went back to my old column and went to the link, it was dead. And so I did a little searching and found that they had done a 2020 ranking, which included her whole record, that was the same result. And not only further to the left than Bernie, but co-sponsored the fewest bipartisan bills of any member of the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, no,
I
know. I went
total
and
partisan
looked
hack,
too.
total leftist. This whole idea that, I can indulge my never Trump views because, well, there's a benign alternative, or at least the veneer of one. There's no veneer anymore. There is no benign alternative here.
Hey,
and
Mark,
it should at least make it a harder choice.
I'm still not voting for Trump.
I know
I'm,
well, this
I'm
is why
still
I'm
not
asking you
voting.
this question. I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying that this doesn't make it easy. It shouldn't make it easy. And it should give people pause because the Democratic Party is basically saying, guess what? You hate Trump so much, we're going to use your hatred to ram through the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, get rid of the filibuster, reform the Supreme Court, do all this stuff. If she wins this election, and the Democrats keep control of the Senate and they win back the House, it is lights out for all the things we care about in public policy. So all I'm saying is, if somebody looks at that and says, I still think Donald Trump is such a threat that I can't pull the lever for him, I respect that. But there's a bunch of people who wrote back and said, hell no, no, hell no, not a chance. I don't care. I don't care what it is. Bad policy is so I can survive bad policy. It's like, no, it's not. It's just not that easy. I'm not saying that that it's a clear choice that you have to vote for Trump. But if you're not even if you don't have any even pause about the prospect of Kamala Harris in the White House, like one of the reasons I think the Republicans should not be running around saying Biden is non compos mentis and should be resigned from the presidency or be forced out in the 25th Amendment is it would make her president. She should never be anywhere near the Oval Office ever. So I just think that there's an interesting conversation. It's thrown a wrench into this whole easy calculus. It shouldn't be an easy calculus.
Exit question for me, for you, our guest, Mark Thiessen. You are our guest. What do you think with Biden having stepped aside that J.D. Vance was
Disastrous.
an even worse choice than he appeared to be at the moment?
Even worse choice. So first of all, I think that was a choice that was made in a height of overconfidence. I've always thought that there was irrational exuberance on the part of conservatives about this election, even with Biden on the ballot. I mean, I've said numerous times on Fox and in my post column that the voters of Pennsylvania elected John Fetterman, who had an even worse debate than Joe Biden, who had his stroke, and they didn't like the alternative. There are some people who will elect a senile old man rather than Donald Trump because they just dislike him. And Trump's challenge, especially after the assassination attempt, his base will walk over hot coals and molten lava and broken glass to cast their ballot for him. There is no need to pour any gasoline on that fire, baby. It is raging. Every Trump supporter is going to come out and vote early and vote often. They are going to cast their ballots for Donald Trump. His job is to win over the people I was describing earlier, not the never Trumpers, but the Trump skeptical voters, the people who think that Biden was a disaster and were sort of giving Trump a second look and looked at him sympathetically after the assassination attempt and said, well, can I see him in the Oval Office? And I think in a lot of ways in the convention, they did do a lot towards making that an easier choice for people. I think the start of his speech, if not the middle of it.
The first 30 minutes.
Yeah, which is probably what most people saw, to be perfectly honest, because unlike the Cuban people, they are actually not forced at gunpoint to watch the entire speech that goes on for 4 hours. They could actually turn off the TV. They won't be put in the gulag for not watching past the first 30 minutes in America. I think the speech was better than many people think, and it certainly he hit some of the notes that he needed to. But the choice of Vance, there is not a single person who was not voting for Donald Trump who will vote for him because of J.D. Vance. What he needed to do with that choice was signal to the American people that this is going to be a normal conservative Republican presidency. He could have reached out to Hispanics or through Rubio. He could have sent a message of stability through Burgum. There was so many options, and I think this was the worst choice. And I think now in the wake of Biden getting out, we're like the dog who caught the car. It's like, okay, now we got Harris, who's an undefined, radical leftist, but undefined in the eyes of many people. And she's going to get a little bit of a honeymoon and a surge. And it would really be good if they had somebody who sent a message to swing voters that, it's safe to vote for Donald Trump. And I don't think that choice does it at all.
Amen to that. Smart guy, Marc Thiessen, you are correct.
Thank you.
And I agree with you on that 100%. Loved your piece, and I know all of the people who keep getting mad at me on our Substack for saying mean things about Kamala Harris are going to get even mad at me for calling her an idiot. And you know what? tough luck. She is. You guys
Well, I'm
think
glad
we-
you got some of the incoming instead of me.
For once. For once. There's plenty for both of us. Hey, everybody. Marc's piece is linked, and if you have views, comments, criticism, don't hesitate to let us know. We know you won't.
Take care.
Let us know what topics you'd like us to cover. You can get in touch with the show by emailing us at whatthehell@aei.org.
Or you can reach us on Twitter. I'm at dpletka.
And I'm at Marc Thiessen. That's Mark with a C.
Please rate and review the podcast. If you like the show, please subscribe, share it, comment on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this.
Thanks for listening.